Imagine a crowded market in Maharashtra, India. The heat is stifling, a thick, suffocating blanket of spice, exhaust, and human sweat. In the middle of this chaos, a young woman is caught with her fingers in a stranger's pocket. A mob forms instantly. The air vibrates with jagged energy. People are screaming. But the woman doesn't run. She doesn't beg for mercy. Instead, she lifts her infant son high into the air. She screams that she is the victim, that the mob is trying to harm a starving mother and her child. The anger vanishes, and they hesitate. They back away in shame. That child wasn't just her son. In that split second, he was a tactical shield. As a parent, even though my children are teenagers now, this is where the case first started to twist in my gut. I mean, we are biologically programmed to protect our children at any cost. And to see that sacred instinct weaponized, to see a child used as a tool to escape a crime, it is a violation of the very fabric of the family. Over the next 6 years, this family, Anjana Bai and her daughters Renuka and Seema, would turn that maternal shield into a systematic assembly line of kidnapping and murder. Hi and welcome to Criminology Uncut. I'm Kim, and today we are dissecting the chilling story of the Gavit Sisters. I have a degree in criminology, and I've been working inside a high security prisons for many years. And my goal here is to look past the headlines. We aren't here for the sensation. We are here to understand and to look at the crime. Before we dive in, this is a deep dive channel. If you value these research-heavy long-form dissections like I do, please subscribe and hit the bell icon. It helps me to continue to produce this kind of content. But I also want to give you a warning. This episode involves the systematic abuse and murder of children. Please take care of yourself while watching and reconsider if you are sensitive to this kind of crime. To understand why this case is so uniquely horrifying, we have to look at the concept of the sacred mother. In India and the rest of the society, the mother Ma is the ultimate figure of protection. The Gavit family didn't just break the law, they weaponized this cultural trust. By carrying a baby, they became invisible. They used the very foundation of social safety as their camouflage. They hid their evil in the most innocent place imaginable, in a child. This story starts with Anjana Bai. She was manipulative, charismatic, and cold. She didn't steal just to survive, she stole for power and adrenaline. Her daughters Renuka and Seema were raised as an extension of her own psyche. To outsiders, they appeared like a normal, close-knit family. They laughed together and they shopped together. In criminology, we call this the mask of sanity. They could mimic normal emotional behavior to blend into the crowd, while underneath there was a total disconnect. Anjana taught them what to take, how to act, and how to stay off the radar. Her children were no longer dependents, they were willing participants in a dark ecosystem. In this case, we must remember the victims. They were not just cases. We will start with the first child, Santosh. 1990. He was snatched from a beggar and kept for nearly a year. They kept him because he was a high-quality prop. He looked just right in Renuka's arms. But in 1991, during a theft at a temple, Anjana needed a distraction. She grabbed this boy who had lived in her home for 12 months and violently threw him to the ground. When his injuries rendered himself useless as a prop, she fatally smashed his head against an iron pole. This is instrumental violence. It's cold and it's calculated. Next victim was Shraddha. She was only 2 or 3 years old. She cried for her mother. In the Gavit house, there was no comfort. Her distress was seen as a technical malfunction. She was later strangled in a public toilet while the sisters kept watch. Then there was Gauri. By then the killing was normalized. There is a report that they once sat in a cinema watching a movie with a dead child in a bag on their lap. I mean, think about that. As a parent, I look back at those ages and I see the vulnerability in the child. To be able to consume entertainment in this setting, cinema, while a life you just took sits cold beside you. It shows a total fragmentation of the soul. We've talked about the names we know, but in the police files there is a number that gives me chills and should give you chills. 42. Investigators suspected the Gavit family may have kidnapped up to 42 children over 6 years, but only 13 could be proven in court. Nobody knows where the rest are. Anjana Bai targeted the statistically invisible, the children of beggars and migrants, people that the system often overlooks. It is a staggering thought that an entire classroom of children could simply vanish without the world stopping or knowing. When we look at this family, we see a closed deviant system. In a normal family, if one person suggests a crime, the others act as a moral break. Anjana Bai destroyed that break within her family. Through social learning theory, she ensured her daughters had no alternative reality. This is all they know. But how do you live with yourself? And I believe that they use neutralization theory, specifically denial of the victim. The child wasn't a human, the child was a utility, a tool. Unfortunately, this is not an isolated incident. We can look at the McCrary family in the US in the 70s. Like the Gavits, they made crime a family business around the dinner table. When your parent hands you the weapon, the moral compass is erased. While the McCrarys traveled to escape, the Gavits stayed in the crowd, using routine activity theory to strike where there were no capable guardians. Everything changed with their last victim, Kranti. This wasn't a random snatch, it was a surgical act of cruelty. Kranti was 9 years old, the daughter of Mohan Gavit's new wife. Because of that family connection, the Gavit women weren't strangers, they were family. They promised to take Kranti to meet her big ma. They promised she would be home the very next day. The mother trusted them, and she handed her daughter over. Can you imagine the hollow, gnawing silence that fills a home for an entire year? Every day that mother looked at the door, every night she listened for footsteps that never came. Then, one day in the market, she saw her, Anjana. The mother didn't scream, she lunged. She grabbed Anjana by the arm. Anjana looked her in the eyes and lied. She said the girl was in another city. But Kranti was already dead. So why do you do this to someone who knows your face? Is it a power play to take something precious from someone you despise and let them know exactly who did it, while they are powerless to stop you? When police finally caught the trio, the system shattered. In the interrogation room, Anjana confessed, 13, I have killed many, but I don't remember the count. In their home, they found a room full of children's clothes, trophy taking, stacks of tiny shirts and sandals, a silent haunting archive of the disappeared. In 2001, Renuka and Seema were sentenced to death. Anjana had by then already passed, but the system slowed down. Their mercy petition sat on the president's desk for 5 years. In 2014, the court commuted their sentence to life imprisonment because the delay itself was ruled inhumane. Does the state's inefficiency cancel out the gravity of the crime? For the family of those children, this felt like a final betrayal. What makes this case so hard to process isn't the chaos, it's the order. It was a system where empathy was deemed irrelevant. It reminds me of some work I did in prison. Even among the most hardened criminals, there is usually an unwritten code. You do not touch children and women. The Gavit family broke even that unwritten law. It forces us to ask how many crimes like this are happening right now, not because they are hidden, but because they are happening in the places we refuse to look. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. If this deep dive gave you a better understanding of the criminology behind these invisible crimes, please give the video a like. I read every single comment. Take care of yourself and stay safe.